Hello, so it's 4 o'clock by my clock and it's time to start, and I'm just going to change this slightly to get a better view. So we're going to talk about due diligence. In the last webinar, we talked about the stages that you should go to in order to get yourself invited to join a board. And there was quite a bit of thinking there, which does carry over in a little bit into this one. And also the due diligence, this one probably carries over into the next webinar, which is about what to do when you do get an offer, or after you've got an offer. So let's just start straight away on the presentation. So essential due diligence, the 7 things you must do before joining any board. Now, it says 7 things because there are 7 categories of things, and the last one is one we shall be dealing with in the next webinar. There are lots of things in this list, so you probably won't be able to note them all down, but there will be a replay, and you'll probably want to watch this through several times or later go through it slowly. So let's just move on. So I'm Richard Winfield. I'm committed to helping boards improve their performance, and I help new directors and boards become more confident, more effective, and more quickly. And of course, that's what I'm helping you to do today. So the first thing to think about actually is, are you competent? Are you qualified actually to join a board? So let's talk about your eligibility. In the UK, you must be over 16 years in age. You cannot also be the company's auditor, and you mustn't be an undischarged bankrupt. You must not be disqualified from being a director by a court order. Fairly obvious that, I guess. So the biggest consideration at this stage probably is to think about time. As a rule of thumb, you can probably allow 3 times as much time as is actually required for attending board meetings, because there's preparation and various things to do. You should also allow extra time over the first 3 months for induction, and take account of the fact that you will probably also be invited to join committees, and that takes up time. And later on, you might even become the chairman of a committee. So you think about the time is going to be now, but think about the time that you might be committing in a year or more. What about your personal qualities? Are you an effective and persuasive communicator whose contribution is concise, objective, and clear? It's one of the things that boards will be looking for. Are you socially competent and with a deft touch of humour? Are you independent of mind without prejudicing loyalty to colleagues and the board? In other words, can you think for yourself but still remain part of the team? Are you a good listener who can focus on key issues and respond with sound advice? Are you democratic in balancing the interests of shareholders against the interests of others involved in the business? Are you an achiever in your own right in your particular field? Have you got some track record that is attractive to potential boards? And are you constructive in expressing ideas as an individual when divorced from the structure and props of your own organization? This particularly arises for non-executive directors, because suddenly you're on your own. And you're no longer in a context of an organization. Are you positive in making statements and proposals and unwilling to acquiesce in silence? Job-related competencies. Do you have these competencies? Do you have strategic expertise, the ability to review the strategy through constructive questioning and suggestion? Do you have a basic ability and knowledge of accounting and finance? Do you have the ability to read and comprehend the company's accounts, any financial material presented to the board, financial reporting requirements, and some understanding of corporate finance? Now, you don't have to be an expert, but there is a basic level that really does apply to all directors. And if you don't have it, well, you should do some studying beforehand. And financial and market awareness. Do you have the ability to recognize warning signs that might indicate a change in the overall health of the organization? So read into the information that you might get. and a legal understanding. The board's responsibility involves overseeing compliance with numerous laws, as well as understanding an individual director's legal duties and responsibilities. And clearly, just if I may make a plug, this is one reason why I am promoting the Essential Directors Masterclass, our CPD program, and everything else that we do at the Directors Academy, so that you have the ability to have a basic understanding of what you will need to know. Managing risk. Do you have experience in managing risk, in managing areas of risk to the organization? Big part of being on the board is being able to understand and balance and mitigate risk. Managing people and achieving change. Do you have these people skills? And do you have experience with financial markets? How much industry knowledge do you have? Do you have experience in similar organizations or industries? Or I'm often keen to suggest that you might have experience in other industries. Do you have transferable industrial knowledge and the ability to relate across? So, first question now for you about a particular board. Do the culture and relationships fit? Is this the sort of place where you would like to work because you believe in what they do and how they do it? And will you fit in reasonably? So here's some questions to ask. What are the other directors like? Do you share their values and aspirations for the company? Now, these are some of the things you might have to discover by talking to people. Could be ex-directors, current directors, company secretary, etc. How capable and committed are they? Do they appear to be qualified for their roles? Who are the current chief executive and non-executive directors? What's their background and record? And how long have they served on this board? Are they people of integrity, willing to ask difficult questions? And are they there to make a contribution or just to flatter their egos? How do they operate as a board? How do they operate as a team? Do a few dominant directors commandeer the meeting? Are there factions? Definitely something to be conscious of. Does superficial knowledge go unchallenged? Is the chemistry collaborative? So a lot of this is soft stuff that you need to ask around about. What is the size and structure of the board and of the board committees? And what are the relationships between the chairman and the board, the chief executive, and the management team? Are there directors who dominate board deliberations or who discourage meaningful discussion or dissent? Are there directors who serve as an effective counterbalance to management? Does the board have good processes? Are discussions relevant, rigorous, and penetrating? Is the board equipped to handle corporate life-threatening issues? What happens when things go wrong? Definitely need to think that through. Do directors think, question, and challenge? Or are board meetings ritualistic with tick box governance, inadequate understanding, and a focus on short-term and internal issues? How do they deal with challenge, risk, and conflict? Do they demonstrate curiosity to question and the courage to challenge? Are they alert to risks and the reality of what is happening around them? Do they think for themselves? Next, best practice and governance. Let's check that they have good processes. Is the company committed to compliance? Really, really important. No tick box thinking here, please. What record does the company have on corporate governance issues? Does the company have sound and effective systems of internal controls? What are the processes for setting the agenda, board meetings, and minutes? How does the board address decision-making? How does it address strategy and monitoring of performance? How does the board differentiate between board responsibilities and management roles? Does the board have an effective committee structure? Does the board have a formal process for dealing with complaints and whistleblowers? Does the board have off-site residential retreats or away days? And you know, perhaps from me, I believe every board should have a 2-day residential to think about strategy, and 6 months later an away day to monitor progress. Who owns the company? Who are the main shareholders? And how has the profile changed over recent years? What is the company's attitude towards and relationship with its shareholders? And the current talk is very much these days about engagement. Check out its financial health. My goodness me, there's big risks here, so make sure you know what you're doing. What is the company's current financial position, and what has its financial track record been over the last 3 years? What are the exact nature and extent of the company's business activities? What is the company's competitive position and market share in its main business areas? What are the key dependencies? For example, regulatory approvals, key licenses and such like. What are some of the things that you might not be aware of, but externally affect your ability to trade? Does it have sufficient reserves? And primarily, I guess that will be financial reserves. Is its projected cash flow adequate? Cash is king, and cash flow is fundamental. You do need to understand how the cash flow works in this business. How does cash flow vary through its business cycle and through the month? Very important, because you may find that you're doing really well because this is the bonus part of the year, and the next year is much quieter, and you need to be aware of that and plan for it. How does the board monitor financial performance against its budgets? What checks and balances are in place to detect errors, fraud, and abuse? And there's been a lot of stuff in the press about black holes. Make sure that this company is capable of monitoring and checking. Are any specific expense areas rising faster than sources of income? Again, you need to understand how the cash flows, etc. Right, what about risk and risk appetite? All companies, all business involves risk. You do need to understand how this board deals with it. So, successful business involves taking risks. You need to understand the risk profile first. Does the board commission independent reviews of the board, risks, and internal controls to provide it with advance warning on precisely where their vulnerabilities and weaknesses are? Make sure that there is a system for confronting the unknown unknowns. Has the company implemented confidential whistleblowing and amnesty procedures, and audits of internal controls over culture and reputation? Is there anything about the company's business activities that would cause you concern in terms of risk and any personal ethical considerations? Is any material litigation, investigation, or other claim presently being undertaken or threatened either by the company or against it? In other words, are there things that might disrupt good normal business? Are you satisfied that the internal regulation of the company is sound and that you would be able to operate within its governance framework? What insurance cover is available to directors? And what is the company's policy on indemnifying directors? And it's one of my themes that becoming a director is taking on risk, personal risk as well as business risk. So what about the board, its purpose, and your role within it? Does the company have a meaningful mission? And in the new corporate governance code these days, there is much more focus on the company's purpose. And the reason is because that's what will make it stable in the longer term. So does this company have a defined vision, mission, and value statement? Does it, here we go here, give a sense of the future in the vision, mission, value statement? Does it guide decision making and strategy? In other words, is it something that is used, not just stuck on the wall somewhere? Does it create a shared purpose? Does it provide guidelines that determine behavior? Does it inspire emotion? Does it connect to values? Are the annual report and corporate strategy consistent with the organization's defined purpose? So the questions we've just been asking now, are they all tied up and actually integrated? And when you talk to the outside world with your annual report and so on, is it all stitched together, so to speak? Does the board hold regular off-site retreats or away days to review its purpose and consider strategy? Something I mentioned earlier. Are its plans consistent with the corporate strategy? Are plans compatible across different business units? And are individual and combined plans achievable within the resources available and the forecast revenues and costs? Are plans consistent with and potentially responsive to changes in market, economy, and regulatory environments? Are plans consistent with legal and ethical requirements? And are they supported by the management? Now, this is an interesting question, and in a way it reflects some of the things we discussed in the previous webinar about how to become a director. Why does this board want you? What is it they're particularly looking for? Here are some of the things. It's worth understanding what they're looking for and what your role will be. So it could be to provide instant management or functional experience, to bring something that you have at a level either they don't have or at a higher level than they used to. It could be to add prestige or respectability to the board. And if so, is that really what you're looking for? Do you need something more than that? Is it to bring experience of proposed activities such as a flotation, a merger, or a takeover? Very often that's an excellent reason for appointing a director, to have some specific experience of something which is in the plan. Does it strengthen defenses against possible takeover approaches or shareholder activity? Is it to bring your influence and to bring access to your network of contacts? Is it you that they want, or is it the world that you have access to? Is it to support the chairman's power base? And if so, what does that imply about the way the board operates? Is it to represent a dominant shareholder? May well often be the case, but remember that a nominee director is still a director equal to all the other directors and must be independent and must take responsibility for corporate decisions. Your appointment might be to provide a potential successor to the chairman. In other words, you really need to talk through the potential in terms of time and responsibility. As part of a board shake-up following new ownership, new chairman, or an internal upheaval. Now, it could be an exciting time, or it could be a bit of a risk. Or to replace a retiring director. Or it could be to create a better balance of experience to respond to a changing business environment. Now, this is something that is changing significantly, certainly over the last 10 years. There was a time when directors were appointed, and I mention this often, on a 3+3 yearly basis. Very much now, you are appointed on an annual but renewable basis, specifically because you are relevant to the circumstances. And if circumstances change, it may well be that somebody is brought in to replace you because they're more relevant. Or it might be to rejuvenate a tired or aging board, or to support diversity policies, Now, what does that mean? Diversity has tended to mean to do with gender, race, and such like, but it's much more important these days to understand that diversity covers lots of things, particularly in terms of experience, but also it may be representing different communities and so on. Think carefully about that, of course, whether it is genuinely something you can contribute or whether it's a box-ticking exercise. So when you come to join the board, is this role right for you at this time? This is an important question. It's to do with opportunity cost. If you take this job now, this opportunity, there are two possibilities. One is that it will give you really good experience. You'll enjoy doing it. You make a contribution, and it will make you more attractive for a future board appointment. But the alternative is that it might actually be in conflict with another opportunity because you might not have the time, or you might be in industry. And an opportunity might come up in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, maybe, that you would really like to go for, but you're no longer able to because you've accepted this one. So is this role right for you at this time? Is it right in your terms of where you are in your career? And does it have an opportunity cost? So when you start, this is the last stage, induction and professional training. These will be covered in the next webinar, in which I explain about becoming a director and in particular the first 100 days. So I look forward to talking to you when that webinar is. In the meantime, you'll be very welcome to find out more at thedirectorsacademy.com. So from Richard Winfield, goodbye for now.